And now on the display table, we have what our friend Isaac would have been wearing during the Civil War and also at the time of the Battle of Chickamauga. We'll start on the left side of the table again. This is his haversack, which his contents would have still been the same as his Confederate counterpart. He'd have had food in here, had his utensils, his cup, his plate in there, and here is his canteen. And this canteen's a little bit different than the old Mexican War style tin drum canteen. This canteen's a little bit bigger than the Confederate version, and it's got a cover on it, and the cover helps insulate it the best it could at that time period to keep the water a little bit cooler. And here is his cartridge box, which I won't go into details about it, but he's got brass US plate, and he's got the Eagle breastplate, and he's wearing it. The breastplate would be about right in here. And his waist belt with US on it, and the buckle, his cap pouch, bayonet and bayonet scabbard. And over here is his double bag knapsack. And the difference with this one is the blanket is supposed to be rolled and put up top. And your other contents, your shelter half, which is your tent, would have went in here. Your rubberized blanket would have went in here. More clothing. A knit beanie sent from home. Knit hat to keep your head warm. And socks. More socks. And possibly a scarf. And string, or hemp twine. And in this compartment, you can put your shelter tent in there, your rubberized blanket. This compartment is more for clothing. It's got a painted cloth flap. Painted cloth would keep it water resistant, not waterproof. Because over time, stuff would eventually get wet, but not as bad as it would if it wasn't painted. So the Battle of Chickamauga started September 18th and lasted from the 18th, 19th, and 20th of 1863. But we're going to go a little bit further back and tell the backstory of the Army of Tennessee, Confederate Braxton Bragg's Army of Tennessee. Before it was the Army of Tennessee, it was the Army of Mississippi under Albert Sidney Johnston. They fought at the Battle of Shiloh, and after Albert Sidney Johnston was killed during the battle, Beauregard took command and was unable to give the Confederacy a victory. Moving on forward, Braxton Bragg takes command of the Army, and it later becomes known as the Army of Tennessee. Some of the same men that fought at Shiloh was transferred into the Army of Tennessee. They later, in 1862, in October, they fought at the Battle of Perryville, Kentucky. Bragg was unable to give the Army of Tennessee a victory there and retreated back into Tennessee. Later on, in the winter of 1862, they fought the Battle of Murfreesboro or Stones River. Here again, another Confederate defeat for the Army of Tennessee. And leading on up into 1863, General Rosecrans, Federal commander, had maneuvered Braxton Bragg all the way out of Tennessee. A lot of the Tennessee units that were in the Army of Tennessee would never see home again. They were pushed all the way into northern Georgia. And the reason why the Battle of Chickamauga is so important is it's the second bloodiest battle of the war, right behind the Battle of Gettysburg. It was one of the only times in the history of the American Civil War that the Confederate Army outnumbered the Federals. And after series of defeats, the Confederates in the Army of Tennessee finally was able to pull off a victory. And a lot of the reason why the Army of Tennessee was unable to be successful in battle, it wasn't that they were not good fighters. They were some of the best fighters in the Confederacy. And they're always overshadowed by the Eastern Theater with General Lee and all the victories in Virginia. Their leadership, General Braxton Bragg, he was, at the time, they didn't know how to classify him, but if he was classified today for his mental state, he would probably be considered as being schizophrenic. He was undecisive. He would turn a Confederate he would turn a Confederate victory into a defeat just by his bad decision making. So at this point in 1863, the Battle of Gettysburg has been fought, Federal victory, and the Battle of Vicksburg has been fought, another Federal victory. The North is finally turning it around and actually winning battles. Rosecrans has the idea that he can trap Braxton Bragg's army in Chattanooga and lay siege to the city, just like Grant has done at the Battle of Vicksburg, and pull off a Federal victory in northern Georgia, southern Tennessee. Rosecrans moves his forces around Chattanooga to try to block in Braxton Bragg. But Braxton Bragg finds a gap in the lines and able to pull his whole army out into northern Georgia into open country. And this is all taking place in July, August of 1863. There was a drought at that time period. The roads are nothing but dust bowls, and the men in long marching columns are choking on the dust and covered in dirt and filth. At this time, you couldn't see to tell which side a man was on because he was so filthy. Everybody looked like they were brown or tan colored. So in the open country in Georgia, Braxton Bragg's army is scattered out, guarding mountainous gaps and roadways, trying to figure out what Rosecrans' next move is. Also at this time, General Rosecrans' Army of the Cumberland scattered out through Georgia, trying to figure out where Braxton Bragg's army is. Neither army is concentrated and massed together at this point in the early weeks of September 1863. But Braxton Bragg starts concentrating his army along the bank of Chickamauga Creek in Catoosa and Walker County, Georgia. And the name Chickamauga has been debated by scholars of what it means. But the name Chickamauga is a Cherokee name, and it means River of Death. And that's what these two armies are about to do along the banks of Chickamauga Creek. And the early hours of September 18th, or in the early hours of September 18th, 1863, Braxton Bragg sends a Confederate force to what would be considered the northern end of the battlefield along, there's two bridges. You got Reed's Bridge in the north, Alexander's Bridge in the south. He sends a Confederate force of Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry, and Nathan Bedford Forrest is considered one of the best cavalry commanders on both sides of the war. He sends Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry to the north to Reed's Bridge to try to find a way across the bridge. And he encounters Colonel Mitney's cavalry, and a small skirmish breaks out on September 18th, 1863. And Mitney sends word back to Rosecrans that he needs reinforcements. He's been facing a large brigades of cavalry at Reed's Bridge, and he sends up Colonel Wilder's Lightning Brigade. And Colonel Wilder's Lightning Brigade, the reason why they're called this is they're mounted infantry. It's a new concept in the American Civil War of mounting infantry on horses. They're also armed with Spencer repeating rifles. And the Spencer repeating rifle is a new weapon for the Federal Army. The first time it was used at the Battle of Gettysburg, but in limited numbers, and it proved to be great success. It's a repeating rifle that uses a metallic cartridge. It's all self-contained, just like modern day ammo is. And it's a 7-shot repeater. It loads from the back of the weapon, 7 shots, and you put the steel tube back in, and it's got a spring, and it pushes the ammo up into the gun. And as fast as you can bring the lever down and back up, it puts another round into the barrel, and you cock the hammer and you fire. And it slows Nathan Bedford Forrest's men down with that kind of firepower on the field. But the battle, or the skirmish at this time, is a stalemate. Bragg orders Nathan Bedford Forrest to cease the action because it's starting to get dark at this time period, and Rosecrans orders his men to call off the engagement. Both armies are still not 100% concentrated yet. Bragg is in better conditions than Rosecrans at this time. Now, over the night, Federal troops come in from all over Macklemore's Cove on the western side of the battlefield, and all the mountain passes from the southern Appalachian Mountains, and they start concentrating their forces. Early in the morning of September 19th, Rosecrans orders another Federal brigade of infantry back to Reed's Bridge, and this time the Federal commander is Colonel John Croxton, a Kentuckian, and his brigade is made up of men from Kentucky and various other states. And he orders Croxton to attack the Confederate brigade that's over on the opposite side of the creek at Reed's Bridge. When Croxton's men come into battle line in this dense thicket at Reed's Bridge, he starts getting engaged by 3 different Confederate infantry brigades. He sends word back to General Rosecrans, and Croxton, he was a little bit of a jokester, and he sends word back to Rosecrans. He says, "Sir, which Confederate brigade would you like for me to attack? I'm facing 3, not 1." And he's in desperate need of help. And this is the real opening stages of the Battle of Chickamauga. And at this time, Rosecrans starts pushing troops to the northern part of the battlefield. And the battle starts intensifying, and more Confederate troops start coming up, and next thing you know, you've got battle lines up to 1.5 to 2 miles long, engaging all along Chickamauga Creek.